Hey BookTube, it's Jackie. How's it going? If you're new to me and it's the first time you're seeing my face, hello, what's up? My name is Jackie. I sit on my floor and I talk about books. So I hope that's why you're here, because that's what's gonna be happening today. If you're not new to me, thank you for always tuning in and the continued support. I really do appreciate it. So today for you, as you can see from today's title of video, I have another book review for you, and this is all on The Bastard Prince of Versailles by Will Bashore, and I really hope I pronounced your name right. If I didn't, I apologize. This is one of my Reads Discovery books. If you are not familiar with Reads Discovery, it is a company that reached out to me over a year ago and asked me to be a video reviewer for them. And what I do is I go on, they send me a selection of books and I pick out of them, and then I do a video review on the book. So that's kind of the gist of this. But this one I'm really excited about because so far I've only really picked romance books from Readsy, and I wanted a true historical fiction this go around. I need to go back to my roots because it's one of my favorite genres to study and to read. So I definitely picked a doozy of one to come back in with, and this is a fun one. So without further ado, grab yourself a drink, have yourself a seat, and let's get talk about The Bastard of Versailles. All right. So again, this is a full book review on The Bastard Prince of Versailles by Will Bashore. This is going to be released October 1st of 2023. So if you're seeing this after October 1st, 2023, it is already out. Go pick it up. It's a good time. If you are seeing this prior to that, well, you have to wait a little bit, but still go pick it up. It's a good time. A few stats on this book. This is historical fiction through and through. Historical fiction. If you are looking for something that's not historical fiction, don't pick this book up because it's historical fiction. All right, we'll get into it. And it's primarily French monarchical history, as we do cover Louis, who was the bastard son of Louis the 14th. Sorry, I had to redo the Marvin Nimbles in my head again. Louis the 14th, who was the longest reigning French sovereign of 72 years. I believe it was 72 years. He's also known as the Sun King, and he is the king that built Versailles. So that's really one thing that he's super, super famous for. We also do see some homosexual slanders in this book that are used within historical framework and context. So I do want to make that aware. And we also do have sexual acts performed on a minor within historical framework and context. You do have to understand that this time setting is in the 1600s. Society's norms, their values, their ethics, completely different than what we have now. So based off today's standing, yes, there is sexual acts committed towards a minor based off our standings, but in this book, they weren't really frowned upon, at least with regards to age. Maybe the sexes that were involved were frowned upon. So I just want to make you guys aware of that before we get into it. There are some heavy-hitting triggers in this book just because of the historical framework that it's placed in. So please be warned about that. So why did I choose this book? I chose this book because this thing is right up my fucking alley. I'm a history major. I majored in history with a double minor in philosophy and gender and women's studies. And I wrote my senior thesis on Madame de Pompadour, who was the chief mistress of Louis the 15th, the successor to Louis the 14th, who is our sovereign in this book. Now, granted, Louis the 15th inherited the throne when he was 5 on his great-grandfather. I think it was his great-grandfather, actually, he's passing, who was the Sun King. So we do not encounter him at all, but it's within that framework. I'm in that mentality. I've been there. I've been in the jaws of this kind of world and court and all this other menagerie going on. So I felt right at home with this book when I realized who it is about. I definitely wanted to pick this one up and sink my teeth into, and I had a great time with it. It was a really, really good time. I also really enjoy reading historical fiction books about unknown historical figures. Now, our lead character, I want to actually pronounce his name correctly because I am a little rusty on my French. Sorry. Louis de Bourbon. I hope I pronounced that right. I'm sorry if I didn't. He is the bastard son of Louis the 14th. He was a product of the conjoining between, let me get her name right, Louise de la Villiers. I hope I said it right. I'm pretty sure I said it wrong. I apologize. Here are their photos. Here's Louis de Bourbon, and then here is his mother. He also had a sister, which we do encounter as well, Marie Anne, and this is her image right here. So just a little family background right there. But he has some conspiracies about him. He's not a really well-known historical figure, but because of that, his reputation has allowed and his story has allowed for some conspiracies to be surrounded around him. And those political figures, those figures in history have always intrigued me because we really don't know. And so they're really great material for historical fiction books because authors can just kind of go crazy with them, as if they've almost created the character themselves. So I really, really wanted to have a good time with this one, and I did. Very much did. So a brief summary about the book. This is the summary that I was provided from Reezy Discovery. I have not edited this in any way. This is directly what I was provided, which hooked me to the book. So here it is. The Bastard Prince of Versailles narrates the escapades of a misborn prince during the reign of Louis XIV in 17th century France. Louis de Bourbon wasn't a real prince, even though his father was King Louis XIV, the illegitimate son of the king and his mistress Louise de la Valliere. Young Louis has been kept far from the court's eyes until summoned to bid adieu to his mother. To atone for her guilt, she joins a convent, abandoning Louis to the uncertain future. When Louis is humiliated by his father for his role in a secret society, he struggles to redeem himself through heroism and self-sacrifice on the battlefield in his father's army. Yeah, that totally intrigued me. That sounded awesome. This summary definitely encompasses what this book is about. This starts off as Louis as a very young child and goes to his, at the time, what we considered an adult life. It only goes to when he's 16. Yes, he has a tragic end. And that is one issue with historical fiction is you kind of already know the ending. You can look it up. It's public knowledge. So you kind of already know the ending. So I was really intrigued of how the author was going to handle such a very short window of time to encompass so many heavy themes that he's described here. Because we only have historical documentation up till he was 16. So I was really intrigued of what the author was going to do and how he was going to handle that. So that was another reason that drew me into this book was the summary, because I wanted to know. I'm curious. My inquisitive nature came out and I wanted to dig my teeth in and sink in. And I had a great fucking time. So let's just dive in and find out what worked. So first off, what worked? Historical framework. The author did his fucking research. You can tell this man put his heart and soul into this. He knows this time period very, very well. A lot of intrigue, a lot of historical building with historical accuracies, historical world building. He even in the book, now I have a digital copy that I had to print off. I don't have a physical copy because when I tried to put this onto my Kindle, it didn't really transfer, so I had to print it off. But in the book, he does provide a family tree, which is always pleasant for historical fiction, by the way. This is a huge, huge thumbs up. Buku points, brownie points right here, because historical fiction, because in France, they like to name everybody the same fucking things, all right? A lot of Louis, a lot of Maries, a lot of them, okay? Family trees are great. They are great. And he also includes a glossary at the end for some of his French terms and German terms that you come across within the book. So you don't actually have to know French or German to understand this. And in some of the historical slang words that were used, he also gives definitions for those. So buku points, you got a family tree, and you got a glossary right off the top. But I want to talk about historical accuracy. There are things in this that you don't normally know. You can tell he did his research and he included his bibliography, so you can go and double check if you want. And some of the works on his bibliography I've actually read. So I was like, I've read this book. Holy crap, this is awesome. I thought it was great. I had a great fucking time with historical accuracy. I didn't find a lot of, based off of what I know of this time period, any inaccuracies. I mean, he's writing about real people and a real place that we can physically go to. So the world building that he had to create, he didn't have a lot of freedom to go with. Versailles is a real place. You can go see it. Okay, it's one of the biggest tourist attractions in the world. You can go see it and experience this luxury that Louis XIV created. And he describes it really, really well and very, very eloquently. You get a semblance of where you're at and you know where things are and how things move around. and you understand the court mindset. He did really well with the political jargon and the moving pieces within the Versailles court, which was a very hectic court and very gossip-ridden court at the time. And he did really, really well interweaving this within a story. So it didn't feel like reading a history book. It felt like a story that you were just getting that world building. He did really, really well giving us the historical world building, but making it feel like it was fictional. He did a fantastic job with it. Very, very well done. Very, very well written in the beginning with this world building and accuracy, and buku points for having a family tree and a glossary, because that just makes my life so much fucking easier, dude. Thank you. Cheers to you on that. Another thing he did really, really well in this book was capturing the hypocrisy of the French court. The French court at times, if you've ever studied French history, it is like mean girling and high school tendencies on acid. Okay, it is just who's sleeping with who's looking at somebody the wrong way, who's wearing what. It is very, very high school kind of base mentality, this court, and the way he gave that to us was fantastic because he gave it to us in doses. It wasn't just, this is the way, move on. You got every time our Louis de Bourbon was in the court, you got to see how he was shunned, how he was talked about, how he was praised, how he was backtalked. You saw people talking at both sides of their mouth all the time, saying one thing and doing something else, wearing one thing and then practicing another thing. You saw a lot of blending of lines, and loyalties spread very, very thin. Not real loyalties happening. You saw a lot of the court menagerie that is Versailles, and it was fantastic the way he did it. I thought it was great. I got a great semblance and core building of what our hero is dealing with, and the world that he has been brought into, and not even realize that he's been brought into it, because de Bourbon was raised away from court until he had to come to court to say goodbye to his mother, who went to a convent because she had an affair with a married man. She herself was not married, but she's the one that has to pertain of all this guilt and hold it. And so I thought that was great that they also show the social standings up between men and women, married and not married. I thought that was great. How mistresses are propelled and elevated until they're no longer useful, and then they're shamed for choices that they made for a man that they loved. I thought it was great. He did such a good job of weaving this hypocrisy and court intrigue and this political menagerie that's sprouting in Versailles. He just did such a fantastic job with it. I really, really applaud him on that, because that is really hard to write and not make it sound just fucking catty, because it is. It is straight high school. It is who's wearing what, who's sleeping with who, and who's doing what behind whose doors, and who is not cool versus who is cool. Like, that's literally translated French court, and he didn't just give me that. What he did was he elevated that and made it feel very pompous and circumstantial and very much the regal feel that Versailles wanted to create, even though they were doing like high school level tendency bullshit. I thought it was great. Fantastic. I loved the way he wrote this, the writing style he used. So he gave us very small windows of moments. There was a lot of times where we would be talking with this group of characters, and all of a sudden he page break and then go into something else a few days later. We didn't really resolve this. This isn't really resolved, but we're going over to here now. And I liked that brief window, because as a historian, that's all we ever really get is windows. We get little bitty windows of time that we can glean and gain from our primary sources. So I liked the way that he still wrote it like a historian. I liked that feel. It felt very coming home to me. Is it going to work for everybody? No, not everybody's going to appreciate that writing style, but I did. Because I enjoy that. I enjoy that little glimpse and having to put those pieces together, because history, we never have the whole picture. No matter how much we dig, no matter how much we beg, no matter how much we wish that people wrote shit down and saved things and protected things, we never have the full story. So getting these glimpses and windows just to be able to piece the story together really made me feel at home being a history person, and really gave me a good feel of what was going on. And so it worked for me. I very much enjoyed his writing style with it, and even giving me these little anecdotes that I could hold on to, these little nuggets I could revert back to, be like, oh, okay, that's what it is. That's what it is. There's a connector piece, because then I feel like, oh, here's a connection. Here's a connection. Yeah, party. Let's do this. I'm excited. I'm seeing all the connecting pieces. It was fantastic. I very, very much enjoyed it. I loved the subtle fictional romance he included in this. I love this. I loved how subtle it was. It's clear. It's not so subtle that you aren't going to pick up on it, but it's not a major theme through this book, but it is. It definitely helps drive our characters and kind of their ideals, but it does cause some drama, but it's not the drama you think it's going to cause. And I like the way he used it. It was very, very sweet. And when you compare this sweetness of Marcel and Louis together, compared to the vileness of the court and just their backstabbing and their trash talking, when you compare them, it's almost like a reprieve from all of this political jargon and just, the fuck is going on with you people? Make up your damn mind, okay? Stop sleeping with people, for one, and make up your damn mind. This little subtle romance between Marcel and Louis was a nice reprieve, was a nice palate cleanser every once in a while coming back. It gave you almost a home base to come to recharge, and I really, really appreciated it. I also enjoyed how simple it was. There was nothing complicated about them. Yes, there was complications surrounding them because they were both males, but they were not complicated. They weren't. And the little bit of complication you saw, it was understandable because of their ages and not really knowing how to navigate these waters of this new relationship. And I thought it was just so endearing and so sweet, the simplicity of it, just going for walks, going for swims, going for rides, just enjoying each other's company and knowing that a simple smile is all they needed. I just thought that was fucking great. I loved that. I loved it. I loved it compared to the complicated pairings of Louis de Bourbon's uncle, who is the brother of the king, who is obviously attracted to men, wears women's clothing, and is married to a woman. They don't even sleep in the same bed. And just this complex level of trying to make this relationship work and understand, and jealousy flare-ups and possessiveness and things like that. Just seeing that complication compared to Louis with Marcel, or comparing the king's complicated relationship with his queen and how this child is okay to be here, even though they're doing the same fucking things I am, but because their mom happens to be the queen, they're allowed, even though they literally are my brother. They're related, but I'm not welcome. Just all this layers of complication with hierarchy and, reign and all the monarchical intrigues. It just, all that complicated. Bleh. You have this just simple, we just want to go for a walk. We just want to go for a ride. He made me smile today. I read a page of a book to him, and it made our evening. Just this polarity that the author gave me was just exquisite, and I died for it. It was so well done. This polarity that he caused, it was beautiful. Thank you so much for that. It was so nice to have those reprieval moments. Definitely the way they were peppered in, it was just perfect. Another thing that really worked in this book was the conspiracy element. Like I said earlier, Louis de Bourbon has some conspiracy theories about him, and the author referenced them. Now, granted, it's in the author's note, but he referenced them, and I really, really appreciated that. Because when you have conspiracy theories in history, they could be true. One of the conspiracy theories about Louis de Bourbon is that he was the man in the iron mask. He died on the battlefield, but didn't, and was put into the man with the iron mask because he shamed his father for his sexual desires. There's another conspiracy theory that he went off and lived a happy life in Germany. And I love that the author took these conspiracy theories and weaved them into the story. That was fantastic. That was the greatest moment of the story for me, is when we got these fictional elements with these conspiracy theories. Now, historically, all we have record of for Louis de Bourbon is up until he is 16, where he dies on a battlefield. Okay, that is what we literally still have historical accuracies, documentation that we can prove. Straight up. But I like the fact that the author went one step further and included those conspiracy theories, because not a lot of historical fiction authors will use those. They will mention them, maybe even answer some of them with other intrigues, but they never actually like use them like this author did. And I really, really appreciated that, especially for this storyline. I thought it was a great conclusion to the story with utilizing that conspiracy theory. I thought it was great. Very much had a good time with that one. That put a smile on my face. Put a smile on my face, because one thing with historical fiction is you kind of already know the ending. It's one of the sad parts of reading historical fiction, is you don't always have that sitting on the edge of your seat. Is it going to happen? Are they going to win? You already know, because you know how history ends. You can read it. You already know. So to give me that same kind of, are they ever going to, like, is this going to happen? Is this not? Like, to give me that and then go one up and actually give me an ending that matches that intensity that you've created in the story, I thought was great. That's fantastic. I love when historical fiction authors do it, because not everyone does it, but you utilized it very, very well, and I thought it was fantastic. However, there were some things in this book that I didn't find, I didn't think worked, and so we're going to talk about them. So this is what didn't work. So for me, and these are strictly for me, I love reading history books. I majored in history, so obviously I like reading history, okay? I do. But there were a lot of times in this book, especially towards the end, that after we had gotten that world building, after we had gotten that historical context and framework developed, I felt like I was reading a history book instead of a fictional story. And in historical fiction, it's a really hard line to go through, because you want to give enough fiction to where you have that edge of the seat kind of feel, but at the same time, you don't want to walk away from the history too much, because then it becomes total fiction, okay? And I felt like towards the end, our author was relying more on the history than the fictional story he had kind of weaved in there. I would have liked to see more of that weaving element come in towards the end, or more towards the end of the story, more than what was there. It was there. I just would have really liked to see more of it, because we got so much historical framework and context at the beginning, which is warranted, which is needed, which to make the story the way it is. I felt like then it would have been nicer to have more of that fictional element towards the end. But I felt like we were still getting a lot of historical facts, almost like reading a textbook at times. And I don't know what the cause of it was, because I really liked the fictional elements that he was creating in the story. And I felt like I wanted more of them for me. I do feel like the author missed a really fun moment for this story, a very fun psychological study of moments of the story. There is a lot of internals with Louis, especially when he is witnessing Marcel, kind of his internal thoughts about how he is developing and how he looks and what he's thinking. But it's only more focused toward Marcel. But this story is not just about his little romance with Marcel. This is about Louis de Bourbon himself and the events that he was going through. And there was a lot of times where we didn't get an internal monologue of Louis, of how he was feeling going through some of these traumatic events. His mother going to the convent and literally saying, "I'm sorry that I'm leaving, but I'm more sorry that I had you in the first place." Who says that to an 8-year-old? Well, this woman did. Like, how that was really conveying to him. We got the question in his head like, well, why does my brother get to be here and I don't? But it was never further expounded on. It was just the one question. We got a lot of questions, but not a lot of further explanation into what this individual would have been thinking or how he was going to be dealing with it. Some more questions such as, how did he feel after the initiation ceremony? That was traumatic as fuck. Okay, straight up. I would have loved some more intellectual property of Louis during that scene. Just how he was dealing with it, because what we saw was he just didn't talk about it. But he doesn't necessarily have to talk about it with people, but what was going on in his head? What made it? The hypocrisy is like, people are being shunned for this, but all of you are high members of court and standing of court, and I don't understand why I'm being penalized for this and none of you fuckers are. Like, this is crap. How he dealt with the embarrassment from his father, that event, how he really handled it emotionally. I felt like the author missed an emotional component, emotional bonding with this historical figure character at the time. And I don't understand why. That would have been great fictional material. Maybe it's because there wasn't enough history to back up any of the fictional stuff that he wanted to create. I'm not quite for sure, but I felt like that was kind of a miss. And that was kind of disheartening for me, because there was a lot of moments where I would have really liked to learn more about the inner workings of this character in those moments. I got them for the little sweet romances, and it worked. It worked so well, and I clung to those because those were moments I could grasp onto, I could relate to, I could understand. I have never been a 15-year-old male being jacked off by somebody. Never have. Have no idea what that fucking feels like. Have no idea what that would feel like, especially being in front of people. I would have liked more of that. Either if it was shame, whether it was elation, whether it was arousal, something. I would have liked to know what the inner workings of this guy's head. I would have really liked to get in there and dig. So there's a lot of questions arose from those major moments in this boy's life, and I didn't get answers for them. And so that was kind of a little disheartening for me. As for a spice rating for this book, there's a lot of illusion, but not a lot of graphic. And the illusion moments are very sweet, or they're kind of sexual assaulty based off our modern day standards. So I did not give this a spice rating. I just didn't. This is historical fiction. This is not romance. This is historical fiction. This is historical fiction straight through and through. There just happens to be a little bit of some romantic intrigue here and there. And it's not erotic at all. So I did not give this a spice rating, but the little bit of pure, sweet, sentimental moments we get with Marcel and Louis are fantastic. They're very, very sweet. And some of the more graphic depictions of sexualized nature, they are not worded in a way that is very graphic. They are worded in a very tasteful manner. So you can appreciate, if you don't like graphic, you're going to be fine. Historical fiction kind of uses either really, really graphic, or it uses very florally language. This doesn't really use floral language either. It's kind of like in the middle. It's a very graphic terms that he uses, but they're not normal graphic terms, if that makes sense. But they are definitely still interesting and fun to read, for sure. Especially if you understand the framework and the context that they are in, because if you don't, you will think that they are inappropriate, but you have to understand the frameworks and context. But the author does a very good job of giving you that framework and context, so you do not do the presentism thing that a lot of us do when we read history books. Presentism, where you place your modern day views on past events. You cannot do that, or you will misinterpret a lot of the moments of this story. And the author does give you the resources and the tools to prevent you from doing that. So I really, really appreciate that. Which brings me to my final thoughts. If you like French history, this is a yes for you. You should read this. It's a good time. If you like French historical fiction, it's a fun time. If you like European-inspired court drama, yes, check that one off the box. You get it, and you get it in mounds, because that is what the Court of Versailles is. It is a walking soap opera, straight up, okay? If you like unknown history and history of the unspoken people, I think you would appreciate this story because this is not a very well-known character, but Louis the 14th had 16 children that were considered illegitimate that we know of. And he married them all off except for this one. And he was of marriageable age. At 13, men were having households, and he died when he was 16. So he was not married off. So why was he so special? So kind of, he does have a little bit of intrigue, but an unknown intrigue to him as well. So I thought that was really, really interesting. And I very much appreciated that, especially since I like reading about unspoken characters in history. It's a very good time. If you're looking for historical male-male romance, you're not going to get that from this. What you're going to get is a very sweet, PG, maybe even G-rated male-male romance. And I wouldn't even say romance, I would say more companionship. For sure, because we never actually get any declarations of anything. However, there was a few moments where through some of the stories that Louis reads to Marcel and some of the actions that he does, you know his feelings, you know his intentions, but the words are never truly declared. So just be on the lookout for that. Now, for my final rating, I gave this a 3-star. I had a very, very good time with this book. I very much enjoyed it. It's exactly what I wanted for when I was reading it. And I really do appreciate it. So to my author, Mr. Bashore, thank you so much for this story. This was a fun one, and it made me feel like I was back in college and my French history classes. It was great to visit Versailles once more and just get that intrigue and that drama and that feel. I'm not a huge fan of the court politics of Versailles because they are crazy, and I'm not a huge fan of mean girl tactics, but every once in a while it's really fun to read this and realize that, you know, sometimes things just don't fucking change when people and sex and power and emotions and hormones get thrown into a very small window or a very small area and just get all jumbled up. I really, really enjoyed your work, and I had a great time with it. So thank you so much for writing this. I had so much fun, and I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you guys all soon with another review.